Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's your girl Lily. This is Lily's Shelf, and today we're talking about Love is Blind, season 8, episodes 3 and 4. Now I am putting these together because I feel like at this point, I'm not gonna lie y'all, I'm getting bored. I'm getting bored, and I've been watching other people's reviews, and I feel like stuff doesn't really start popping off until episode 5 and on. So we're just gonna start combining some of these because quite honestly, episode 3 and 4 didn't have a lot by themselves. So we're gonna start with episode 3. We start with Joey and Monica. They do have their reveal. They're very excited. But I'm not feeling the physical chemistry. I'm not feeling that oomph. You know, it's the look. The way that you look at your partner tells people all they need to know about your connection. I'm not getting that look from Monica. I was starting to get a little bit of that look from Joey, but I need to see that look in Monica as well. But it's clear that they have a very strong friendship foundation. So hey, maybe they can continue making that leap from friends to lovers, because right now, baby, I need that physical chemistry. Okay, the emotional chemistry is definitely there. They definitely have a very strong emotional connection. Now I need that physical to catch up, and I'm sure that it will now that they've seen each other and they can kind of put a face with a voice. Dave and Molly talk about politics, and I just thought that whole conversation was interesting from the lens of, it's clear that they were both kind of operating in a space of privilege, okay? Definitely white male privilege from Dave and white female privilege on Molly's side, because as Dave was talking, Molly was giving him just like that very generic, like, yeah, cool, like, I agree, that makes sense. But like the stuff that Dave was saying wasn't groundbreaking. Like, it was very like basic. Like, if you have common sense, that would be the way that you would think. Like, I felt like Dave was talking and he expected all of us to fall to the floor and be like, oh my god, he gets it, guys. God, wow. What he say in episode 1 and 2, that because he has a mom, or he had a mom and has a sister, that he gets it. I felt like this was another instance where Dave was talking about stuff and he just expected everybody to fall out. That's how I felt like Dave was expecting Molly to react, and she didn't. And I felt like Dave kind of felt a little bit about that, because he started with talking about heavy politically charged stuff like abortion and his stance on that. And then he was saying how just because our political views are different doesn't mean we can't love each other. I had to stop him right there, because it absolutely does mean that. It absolutely does mean that. Maybe, no, even back in the day, it meant that. Because depending on where you fall on the political spectrum, tells people the main things that you care about or the main things that you disregard, okay? If you are all the way, one way or another, that tells people what you're passionate about and what you feel you can disregard, i.e. is not important. If you are in the middle, I could see where you have a little bit more wiggle room. Like, maybe you agree with some parts on the conservative side, some parts on the liberal side, but even then, I would have to know what sides of the conservative side do you agree with, okay? What side do you agree with? Because if you're watching my videos, I'm obviously black. So like, some stuff you're gonna have to explain. Like, you can't just be like, oh, I'm a conservative and keep it pushing. You gonna have to tell me what that means. You can't be like, oh, I'm a liberal and keep it pushing. You gotta tell me what that means. Because also, people, I feel like nowadays, people just start throwing terms around and they kind of forget that words have meaning. You can't just say you're a liberal, but you don't know what that means. You can't just say that you're a conservative and you don't know what that means. Or you can't just say that you're one of those, or nonpartisan or anything else, but you haven't done any research or you don't vote in elections. Like, if you don't do your research, if you don't see what people are talking about when you say that you are one or the other, like you don't know what your party represents, then you're not either, babes. You're just a bystander. Like, and low-key Dave was given bystander because he was saying how he doesn't like that nowadays you can even put your political affiliation on dating apps. News to me. I said, wow. They really betting y'all for real. For something as serious as a marriage, y'all need to know where you stand on stuff like abortion, like all these, or like, I think they also talked about being a stay-at-home mom. Like, that kind of stuff is important for you and your partner to talk about so that both of y'all make sure that you are getting with somebody that aligns with your values. If Dave, when they started talking about that stay-at-home mom thing, because he was saying that his mom was a stay-at-home mom and she did a lot, and Molly was like, yeah, mine was a stay-at-home mom too. And both of them agreed that they didn't understand why it had become such a stigma, and that they didn't like how people would say, oh, women are more than just stay-at-home moms. While that's true, I feel like at the end of the day, it should be about choice. It should be about choice, whether the woman wants to go out and work or if she wants to be a stay-at-home mom. Because every woman's, everybody's wants and desires are different. So at the end of the day, the only thing that should matter is that the choice is there. I do appreciate that they talked about that, but again, that's something that should be talked about when you are looking at the end of this experiment resulting in a potential marriage. Because what if Dave had said, oh, I don't want my woman to stay at home, I want her to work. And Molly was like, well, I don't want to do that. I want to have like the OG gender roles where I'm a stay-at-home wife. I kind of take care of the household and everything, and then like you go out and work, and we're kind of like a one income household, and maybe I sell some stuff on Etsy if I just feel like it, but like I'm not trying to have a 9-to-5. That would be good to know so that they can know they're not fit for each other. They can keep it pushing. Madison and Mason talk about how comfortable they are with each other. Very interesting. Very interesting considering where this episode goes. But Mason gives Madison, then Mason and Meg have a date, and he also gives her reassurance. And Mason is another one where I feel like he was sitting on that fence for so long. That is also very interesting where this episode goes. Then later on in episode 3, Meg comes back from a date with Mason. She is gassed. Like, she is smiling from ear to ear. She's just so excited. And she talks him up. Like, Meg does not know the word subtle, okay? She is proclaiming basically to the high heavens. She's proclaiming to anybody who will listen that her connection is going absolutely great. It's going swimmingly. She's not saying Mason's name, but none of us are dumb, especially not the other castmates, because you kind of, after a while, you kind of figure out, can kind of deduce who is talking to who. So Meg once again comes back from a date with Mason. She is telling everybody who will listen that it went so great and so wonderful and all this other kind of stuff. Madison, you can tell she's getting annoyed because every time she goes on a date with Mason, she brings up the fact that Meg keeps bringing up how great her conversations with Mason went, but she's not annoyed. She just prefers to keep it more subtle. And we all know what that means. We all know that that's code for, I would like her to shut up. And honestly, I can't be mad at it. So I also think, because while on this date, Madison is saying, like, I feel like every time Mason tries to get deep, Madison will say something to kind of like bring them back surface level. But Madison was saying something. I honestly can't remember what she was talking about. But Mason was like, oh, that's the hottest thing I've ever heard. Like, Mason, you say that every time. Everything is the hottest thing you've ever heard. Babe, stand up.
Y'all be weak in the knees. Stand up. Stand up.
Like, Madison is not even saying anything that's truly groundbreaking. But maybe it's all the grapes and the snacks and the finger foods that they're eating this season is getting to Mason's head, and so he can't think. He can't think clearly of something because, babes, Madison is another one that's giving you bare minimum, and you just eating it up. You eating it up every time. Madison asks Mason for reassurance. He says he feels strongly about their connection. I honestly don't see how Mason is feeling so strongly about their connection unless it's something that we're not getting to see, because Mason and Madison stay very surface level. Not for lack of trying on Mason's part, but like they don't get very deep. I still don't know between the two of them who's cleaner. I still don't know between the two of them, do rainy days make them sad? Like, do they sometimes just have to sit for a moment and think? Do they like their space? Do they like to be all up underneath their partner? What are their hobbies? Like, I think they talked about astrology or something at one point, but like, that's it. Like, at this point, I'll take one of them saying, I like long walks on the beach. And then at the end of episode 3, moving into episode 4, Madison lets Mason know that she has another strong connection, so like she doesn't have to be here, basically, you know, I'm paraphrasing. And I feel like that put some pressure on Mason, because he was looking very uncomfortable as she was talking about that. Like, that's why it moves into episode 4, because we start, well, Netflix, you know, they like to dangle the carrot a little bit, so we don't immediately go back to them. Instead, in episode 4, we get to Sarah and Ben. But we do talk about politics again. And once again, it's so interesting to me when people talk politics, because I always feel like you get a very good sense of somebody's privilege and how they've been able to move through life. Because when Sarah and Ben are talking politics, now Sarah, she was talking about how she did not become involved in politics or really study politics until George Floyd and Trump took office. I find that very, very interesting. She said the Black Lives Matter, she got involved with that because George Floyd's situation was where she lived. So like it was very close to home. But both of those instances, like the George Floyd situation, that's absolutely not new. What Trump did in office, that's not new either for certain groups. And I'm trying to be mindful of the fact that this is YouTube, but like at the same time, y'all know what I'm talking about. Like, neither of those are new except for certain groups that like to act like it is new when it starts to affect them. Okay, when it's affecting everybody else, or when it's not affecting them, they're cool. Case in point, Ben saying that, oh, he's just ignorant to all of that. He basically, all lives mattered us, okay? And Sarah was saying that she did not really like that answer. But while I do agree that that is a very cop-out answer, especially since he said that he didn't vote in the last election, throwing away your voice is absolutely ridiculous. But when you are able to move through life at the highest point of privilege, you can do stuff like that because you know it's not going to affect your daily life. You can throw a vote here and there if you don't like either candidate, because at the end of the day, you move through life based on your work ethic, based on what you put out into the world. You are not being prejudged. And so you can afford to do stuff like that. I feel like Sarah was, getting on Ben. And while I do agree that she should have absolutely gotten on him for his answers, because his answers were lackluster, I'm not going to forget that Sarah is also able to move through life, picking and choosing what battles she wants to deem as important. And I'm going to leave it there. Then Mason and Madison, they have another date. Mason says that he is committed to Madison. Baby, the way Madison's face screwed up, I'm like, yikes. Yikes. Because you did all that. You pressured this man to basically say he's committed to you. and you knew you weren't ever going to be committed to him. Because let's not act like Madison was over here being like Meg, being like my girl Meg, and saying how she thinks that Madison or Mason is her number one, and how she's so excited every time they get to talk, and all this other stuff. Like, it was clear from day one that Mason was a nice option for Madison, but he was never her number one. But I feel like Madison likes the attention that Mason was giving her. She liked the reassurances that Mason was giving her, because she takes some of those reassurances on her dates sometimes with Alex. So I'm just like, girl, why did you basically give him an ultimatum in episode 3 just for when he answers it in episode 4 for you to be like, because what did she say? I think I wrote it. Hold on. So Mason says he's committed to her. Madison is like, do you feel like I gave you an ultimatum to say that? And Mason is like, no. And Madison is like, okay, cool. Well, I appreciate that. And that's it. The way that I would have to get up and walk out, because there's no way Mason is letting Madison play in his face to this degree. She's giving you nothing. That would have been the last straw. That would have been the last conversation that we ever had, quite honestly. I would have told the producers, get Megan here right now. I need to talk to her immediately. Like, that conversation would have turned me all the way off of my connection. Or, yeah, like if I was Mason, that would have turned me all the way off of my connection with Madison. And I would have been like, look, Meg, I was dilly-dallying. I was being wishy-washy. But at the end of the day, you were the one that was always giving me the deep, albeit weird, conversations. Meeting me where I was at. Giving me the same reassurances that I was giving you. Like, every time Mason would say that he liked something about Meg, or like he likes their connection, Meg would give that same energy right back. But then when he would give those reassurances to Madison, Madison would not give that same energy. Like, in this date is when Mason tries to get a little deeper with Madison, talking about how like he feels like he doesn't really know her. And once again, Madison brings it back with a flirty comment, and that gets Mason flustered. Okay, so when he's finally able to regain his words, because he was stuttering, he was speechless. He was stuttering, he was speechless. So when he's finally able to regain his speech, he stays at the surface level that Madison brought him back to. He was trying to wade into deeper waters, and Madison said, absolutely not. Come back up here, or we're going to stay. But I think maybe the producers cut it or something, because I'm sorry. If I tell you I'm committed to you, and all you tell me is that's nice, I'm asking you, what do you mean by that? Then Madison and Alex have a date. And Madison is all gushy, talking about something. Oh my God, I can't believe it. Y'all, she's doing all this because there's some carrots, there's some ranch, and it's grapes in a drink. Once again, if bare minimum had a name, it would be Alex. Like, she's gushing about this stuff. Like, he gave her something sweet, something memorable. It's just some snacks. And then as Alex and Madison are talking, once again, I feel like they don't go deep enough for me. They're not talking about like the nitty gritty stuff. Like, I feel like after those first couple of dates where they talk about their attachment styles, it didn't go any deeper than that. And I also feel like sometimes Madison will say something and Alex will hear her, but not really. Because I feel like he'll respond, but his response is something else, not something that would be like an actual response to whatever she just said. Especially since he uses the excuse that like, oh, I have to think on it. And then he'll come back on the next day and be like, oh, I did think on it, and I do agree with what you said, and I do see how I could have been pulling back and all this other stuff. And I'm like, is this the same song and dance that they're going to be doing the whole time? Because that's going to get exhausting. Why were they walking around the room so much? First, it was Madison. walking in circles around that darn couch. Then it was Alex also walking around in circles around that darn couch. I was like, oh my God. And then the camera angles kept changing so that we could see different angles of them walking around that couch. I would have rather they had just left the camera stationary so I could just see them walking, because all this like trying to follow 1 second and then we're seeing the top of their heads as they move the next second, then we're seeing stationary them walking around the next second, and then we're back to the ceiling shot, and then we're back to the following shot. It was too much. But honestly, I couldn't even really focus on what was going on until Alex asked her to be his girlfriend, and she was like, okay. And then she talked about how she's gonna break up with somebody. Now she feels kind of bad. I don't believe her. Did y'all? I didn't think so. They go back to the women's and men's quarters, and like Alex is like telling everybody who will listen that he has a girlfriend now, and like all the guys are cheering and like they're taking shots. And I'm like, he didn't propose. Like, let's calm down the excitement, okay? Especially since either one of the girls asked Madison, is she engaged? Or one of the guys asked Alex if he had proposed. And he was like, no. And they were like, oh, okay. Like, I feel like, guys, it's boyfriend. Y'all technically were all dating already. So it's like, but then, so Alex leans over to Devin, and he's telling Devin how Madison told him that Mason was her other connection. And so like he's like, oh, I just feel so bad. Like this is just tearing me up. Next thing we know, Mason is coming around, because he doesn't know. Okay, he doesn't know. Mason is coming around and he's like, oh, hey, Alex, like, congratulations, man. So happy for you and everything. And like Alex is smiling in this man's face. They just talking, cheesing, just talking. And honestly, Devin's face was my face in that moment, because that's so low down. Alex definitely could have cut that conversation out of respect. Like, he may not know, but I know, especially since he just got done saying he feels bad that he essentially stole Mason's girl. But he can't feel too bad because he up in Mason's face cheesing. Devin and Brittany have a date. Devin opens up about his struggles with his back pain and how it just got to the point where he started abusing ibuprofen, to the point where he was starting to have very dark thoughts. And he kind of ended up turning to God as a last resort. And that kind of helped him turn his life around, because he went to the doctor one last time. They figured out what was the real cause of his back pain, was able to get him surgery, and now he's able to continue living his dreams, or living his passions of playing basketball and all that kind of good stuff. And like Brittany gets very emotional hearing this. And I do agree that that is definitely something that you need to talk about. But I feel like it wasn't ibuprofen. But that's neither here nor there, because Brittany then opens up about how, I want to say, okay, let me say what she said, and then I'll give my thoughts. So Brittany opens up to the fact that she has had a couple of experiences with women. She doesn't call them relationships, she calls them experiences with women, but she has always seen herself married to a man. And so Devin starts to ask a couple of questions about that, because as Brittany is explaining, and I'm not knocking her, okay, I'm not coming for her or anything, but as Brittany is explaining, it definitely kind of gives the vibe that she's not 100% sure on where she stands in terms of her sexuality. I do agree that that is something that you should definitely bring up to your potential marriage partner. So, future me here, I do just want to say that it did come out that apparently Netflix was chopping up Brittany's conversation so she wasn't confused about her sexuality. She was in a love triangle that we weren't able to see. So all of that was chopped from that. Even though Devin did say that he liked that she was like very, very confident about the fact that like no matter who she ends up with, she is 100% loyal. He did appreciate that. But since he did say that he needed time to process what she had told him, I feel like Brittany kind of took that as a rejection of a part of her. And I feel like from there, their connection it got a little rocky. So if he does end up picking Virginia, I can kind of see why. Or like if Brittany ends up breaking up with him, I can also see why on that too. Because I feel like the way it was handled was pretty good, all things considered. But I also feel like both of them have very valid criticisms for the other, or are very valid in whatever they felt walking away from that exchange. Devin and Virginia have another date. Virginia opens up a little bit about her feelings, but Devin does say that he feels like both of them are holding something back. He tells her about the ibuprofen situation, and she kind of gives him that same grace that Brittany did, and he's very thankful, very glad about that. And they do get a little bit deep, because Virginia does say that she's kind of tired of picking the wrong men in the wrong situations, and she just doesn't want to do that again. And so that's why she's kind of slow to kind of open up. And I feel like this is a good example of like a slow burn, because they do talk about, if that is kind of affecting her present relationships. And I do think that Devin and Virginia could be a strong couple if they continue meeting each other with grace, and they kind of continue being a safe space to each other. Because I feel like Virginia, once she opens up, I feel like she will be like a lover girl for real. But because of her past experiences with relationships and with love, she's kind of trying to protect herself. And I can understand that. We get a date with Taylor and Daniel. They're cute. I don't remember much of what they talked about. I just know that they're cute together. I like the way that they talk to each other. Lauren is getting annoyed because Molly is kind of having all these like passive aggressive remarks, because I'm pretty sure by now, like at this point, everybody knows who everybody else is talking to. And so like Lauren is annoyed because she's like, look, I need some space. I need some space from Molly today. Like she doing too much. So then Lauren and Dave get on, or they go on a date, and I'm like, finally, because Lauren immediately, she's like, look, the streets are saying, and by the streets I mean Molly, this is what she's saying, is it true? And Dave is sitting there like, he's like, oh, this is something I never wanted to happen. I never wanted to be in the middle of women's drama. But notice how he never said it wasn't true. I don't know if Lauren peeped that, but I definitely did. Because he tries to flip it instead. That's when he tries to flip it and says like, oh, this is just women's drama. And Lauren is like, absolutely not. It's not women's drama. It is what it is. Like, you're being wishy-washy and you need to decide what you want. And then we get slow camera zoom ins on Lauren's face, slow camera zoom ins on Dave's face, and then we cut to black. And that's the end of episode 4. Now, Dave and Molly did have a date prior to Dave and Lauren's, but like, it was just more fluff, quite honestly. It was just more fluff. Nothing really happened. Dave likes that Molly isn't pressuring him to do anything, and Molly is gassed that they are pretty much the same person in different fonts. So it's like, oh, all right. But the main thing was, I'm hoping that Lauren sticks to her guns and it's like, look, I have been sure about you this whole time. You're going to have to give me some reassurance. You can't keep playing in my and Molly's face. But that is all for these 2 episodes. Thank you so much if you watched all the way to the end. I really, really appreciate it. And I will see y'all in my next one. Bye, guys.
This nugget of encouragement, things will be alright.